Hello, Revere, and welcome to the Morris Show. We have today a special counselor. His name is John Powers. He's a Ward 5 counselor, and he's been a counselor for 17 years, John. Let me say welcome and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Morris.
We are going to try to bring forth every counselor and every school committee member that's running for office. So it will be counselors at large, and school committee, roughly around 33 plus people.
I think that's very important too for the
Yep.
for the citizens of the city to actually have some type of a contact, whether it's through the TV, media, or in person, to discuss the issues that affect the city.
Right, because if I could just say one thing, John, a lot of the people, not me, but a lot of the people that work during the day will never get a chance to meet the people, but they will if they watch RevereTV 8.
Exactly.
And they'll know what they stand for. So, John, before we start, you've done a lot for the city of Revere. As a senior, I can safely say that. But since you live in Ward 5, Wonderland is in your area, am I correct?
You certainly are correct.
Would you tell us a little what's going to be going on at Wonderland?
Well, right now, due to the efforts of our late councillor Bob Hass and myself, who filed a motion over a year ago for the demolition of that property. I think the property in its present condition is it's an eyesore, and I think it sends a bad message to people that communicate from the North Shore through our city on a daily basis. I'm happy to say today that as a result of that motion and as a result of our meetings with the officials that own Wonderland, right now the demolition is ongoing, and as a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago they came in with a check for $23,000 payable to the City of Revere, and that was for their demo permit alone. So that's happening down there, and I expect within the next 2 months Wonderland will be flattened right to the ground.
And can I ask you, that's all nice and well, and do you have any idea or anything that might be going up over there?
There were two proposals originally for development at Wonderland. Both of those fell through the wayside. And I think that when you bring a potential developer down there, you'd rather have him look at a site that's clean, nothing's on it, like buildings that are in deplorable condition. I think that's a turnoff for any developer. And the one thing that I'm opposed to down there would be more housing. I'd like to see commercial development in there.
I was going to mention that to you, John. I've spoken to people that live around my area. We're not far from you on there. They say more housing would create more problems for the city and the traffic, but they would like to see a little shopping mall, if possible, going there. Do you think there's any chance of that?
I would like to see...
I mean, that's what they say, but...
You know, if you think about this now. If you wanted to buy an article of clothing, like a suit or something like that, or a member of your family did, there's no store in the city right now where that's accessible to them, except to maybe Marshalls or someplace like that.
Marshalls, yeah. Target also sells clothing in the back, but they're not really clothing stores.
They're not a place where you'd go to buy a suit.
Right. They're not strictly clothing. They have other items.
There's not a Macy's in the city, or there's not any store of that caliber in the city.
That would be good. You mean a store like JCPenney or Macy's?
Yeah,
or
something that has some substance.
Sears?
Yeah, something that has some substance. And I'd like to see some good restaurants in there. I'd like to see some good offices in there. People that are going to have disposable income, that are going to spend it within the city.
You know, John, I got to ask you a question. I know you're going to laugh at me, but I got to. That's a nice place if you build that shopping mall or whatever you want to build there, the industrial, to have a theater where people can go to a movie and sit inside. We do have the Showcase Cinema. That would be, well, that might not be a good idea, what I just thought of.
That's a good location for many, many different venues.
Right. We do have the Showcase Cinema, but where you would have a theater right there, you would have the people coming right off the T.
Yep.
Right there.
One of the things, you mentioned the T, and I think one of the things that I would like to see there, when Wonderland is developed, is a commuter station, a commuter rail station. Swampscott has one, Lynn has one, Salem has one, even Chelsea has a stop there.
When you say commuter, you mean like the one they have, like let's say in Malden, where the trains come in there and
Where the commuter line that comes
Right.
from the North Shore
Oh, I see what you
would
mean.
stop there. And I think that would do a couple of things. The first thing it would do would be to take traffic off of North Shore Road, because people, as you know, North Shore Road and the Boulevard are heavily impacted today.
Every morning I try to get out, it's tough sometimes.
And our problem with traffic is coming from the North Shore. It's not basically from Revere. It's mostly people from outside the city that have to come to Revere to get to the airport or Boston. And I think if you had a commuter stop there, a lot of people that might traditionally travel to the airport to a park and fly, they'd get on a commuter stop at wherever they happen to live, whether it be Salem, Swampscott, Newburyport, wherever. Go to that commuter stop at Wonderland, walk over an enclosed walkway over to the Blue Line and go right to the airport. And you'd be taking traffic off of 1A and traffic off of the Boulevard. And I think that's something that the state government really has to, they have recognized it as a result of an earmark in the transportation bond bill, but that has to be funded by the governor and the legislature. And
North Shore Road, is that a state?
that's a state highway, yeah.
Oh,
It's
that's a state
and it's a
highway.
heavily impacted state highway.
You know, in a couple of weeks, school is going to be opening up. You're going to have more cars coming and, you know, mothers
More
driving.
people are back from vacation,
vacation,
more
right.
people driving their kids to school, exactly.
Wow.
So that's what I'd like to see there. And the other important thing is, too, as you may know, Necco, the property at Necco was just sold to Atlantic Developers for $54 million. I've had meetings with them. They also paid $3.5 million in back taxes and water liens just recently.
To the city?
To the city, yes.
Wow.
And my first meeting with them, and I let them know right from the start that I'm adamantly opposed against more housing or more condos on that site. And right away they told me they are too. What they're looking to do is bring in type of business like robotics and you know, that type of industry in here, high-tech industry, and with good-paying jobs. And those good-paying jobs would have disposable income they could spend within the city. So that and a commuter line going through there, which that would, on one side you'd have the Necco property, on the other side you'd have the Wonderland property. Right. So it would sort of like be a North Shore business transportation hub. And I think that would bring a lot of revenue into the city.
It would be good. Not only that, you can make sure that the people that put in the commercial industries here use the people of Revere as the hires, to hire the people of Revere, but before they hire the people of Revere, to hire the veterans first.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much potential there.
Right.
And I think right now they're coming up for a zoning change on the 28th. It's in the zoning subcommittee right now. And it's written very clearly in that zoning that there will be no residential properties built on the Necco site. And that's one of the things that myself and other members of the City Council have insisted upon. No residential.
Wow. I'd like to talk to you about something that I mentioned to the council that was here before you. We had a drainage problem that was rectified, and you also mentioned something about drainage before we went on the air. Can you expand on that for me, John?
I will. As a matter of fact, I have some good news. Under the former mayor, Ambrosino, we spent, just in the Oak Island area, on Arcadia, Elletton, York, and Argyle streets, $900,000 on tripling the capacity of the drainage down there, and also repaving the streets. That water runs into what's called the Eastern County Ditch, which goes out under North Shore Road at Oak Island, and it goes out to the tide gate out there and out to the open water. Okay, so purpose of that tide gate is when you have a heavy rain event, you can close that tide gate and pump out over the tide gate any water that's in the neighborhood to get rid of it. I just found out within the past few days that Planning and Community Development is going to be working on a project to, and this has been needed for so long, to clean that entire Eastern County ditch, to get all of the phragmites, the batteries, the tires, the wood pallets, all the junk that is somehow wound up in there over the years and impeded the water from getting out to where it should be. So you're going to see that start probably next year, I'm told, and it's going to be excavated down approximately 3 feet, and that'll free that entire ditch up. It's the water that comes from the Wonderland area, under North Shore Road, the Shawmut, Sagamore, and Dunn Road area, which is heavily impacted and is below sea level. Goes under North Shore Road, out into take the water out of the Bay Road area, Sear Street, Lawrence Road, Leonard Road, that area down there. Go right out down to Arcadia, Elton, York, and Argyle Streets. Take that water out of there, right under North Shore Road, and right out to the Tide Gate. And that's a big improvement. That will be a big improvement for the City of Revere.
That's good. Now, John, we talked about a long time ago about the wheel operator in Lynn. Does that affect your area in any way whatsoever?
It's affected my area several times
Okay.
during the past couple of years. And when I say my area, I'm not only talking about...
Now, remember, you got wildlife in there too, but they don't. Would they affect your area as well? The wildlife that's in there?
How, what do you mean affect my...
I mean, you know, like you
No,
might have birds that fly over and drop their poops.
Yeah, well...
That's what I mean by affected.
That's something we have really no control over.
I know that.
But the thing is, in the past couple of years, they've had malfunctions over there where the alarms go off at night. People that live on Riverside, people that live in the Point of Pines, they're affected. And not only are they affected, but the people in Oak Island and the people in my neighborhood, which is the Neponset Street area, we're affected too. I mean, it's not a good thing when you wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning and you hear that whistle or horn, whatever it is, just blaring and blaring and blaring all through the night. That's not a
Did you say all through the night?
Yeah, and I've heard it, and that's pollution. That's pollution right there.
Yeah,
it's noise pollution, but it's pollution, and it affects a person's way of life. People that have to get up in the morning,
And
it's
go
a
to work,
working class
right?
community, go to work in the morning and put in a good day's work and be half tired because they didn't get a good night's sleep. And that's happened a couple of times.
Right, and people say if they get rid of the wheel operator, it's going to cost money to ship the trash somewhere else. And the city's going to have to pick up the tab for that, or they'll charge people per barrel.
That could happen down the road.
They do it in some towns,
Yeah,
you know.
I know that, but I mean, because of the dollar impact, that doesn't mean people should have to suffer and put up with that noise and put up with the...
No, I agree with you on
The
that.
cancer rates in this area are very high down, you know, all throughout that area. It has an impact on people's lives. You know, I mean, you just drive by there and look at the piles of ash down there that comes from that incinerator, and no one can convince me that if there was a major flood or a major storm, that ash wouldn't seep into the Pines River. No one can convince me of that. It's common sense. And now they were looking to go another, I believe, another 50 feet with the ash storing
That's
it
what I
down
heard
there.
too.
That's wrong. That's totally wrong. And I think our state government, I know Rosalie Vincent's been, state representative, has been very adamant working against that, along with myself and some other people in the Point of Pines. It's wrong, totally wrong.
That's quite a big area, though, isn't it, where the wheel operator is? I mean, acre-wise.
Yeah, it is. But look at the ash that they've stored there over the years. It's total insanity. You know, I don't see why it's being allowed. I'm against it, and I know my colleagues are against it.
Right, now I'm going to take you away from there and drive you to where I am, if I can do that.
Go ahead.
At the senior center.
Yeah.
Before we started, John, First of all, I want to thank you for coming up there all the time when we had functions and
Yeah.
stopping by to say hello to us. And I would like to invite you to come up someday just to have breakfast with us. Would you give us that honor?
I certainly would. And then,
Good.
as you know, I come in there and I have friends in there. And
Right.
I have one particular friend.
You got two if you don't include me now.
Well, I always include you. But I have one particular friend, Anthony Barrasso.
Oh, yes.
I believe Anthony's 97 years old.
I had a breakfast with him this morning. He lives in East Boston.
He does. And he's a great, great guy. He's a World War II veteran. He fought in the Battle of the Bulge. And
Right.
just a tremendous guy. And he's
Can I-
going strong.
Can I talk to you a little about Anthony?
Sure.
He sits at the table where I used to sit
Yeah.
because I played the music, so I had to go,
Yeah.
move away. He comes over to me sometimes and he'll say, would you play me some songs from World War II? And I'll put that on for him. But I'd like to mention one thing too. Anthony Barrasso is 97, God bless him. John, when I was in Brockton, and you can look on the computer, there was a gentleman there by the name of he was a Judge Layton. George Layton is his name. We celebrated his 105th birthday.
Wow.
Okay? Now, I got to tell you this story. I've said it 100 times, but it's a story that's unbelievable. The guy never went to public school, never went to high school, but he graduated from Harvard with the highest honors, the first class, lived in Chicago, Illinois, became the Supreme Court Justice for the state of Illinois. Now, how did he get into Harvard? People say, well, if he didn't go to high school or public school, how did he get into Harvard? Well, he was a World War II veteran, and he wrote a letter to the Harvard people that he'd like to go to Harvard University because under the GI Bill at that time you can pick your school. Well, they said they couldn't accept him because of his lack of education. But he kept pestering him. I mean, really pestering him. So one of the counselors said, look, let's let him take the exam. And he flunks and that'll be the end of it. We won't hear from him because he kept calling, writing letters, calling. He took the exam. The problem was he came out #1 on it, so they couldn't turn him down. They let him come in. They figured they'd flunk him while he was in school. Didn't work out that way. He graduated with the highest honors of anyone. But he never had an education to get that far. But he did after he finished Harvard. Went back home to Illinois, practiced law, and then eventually became head of the Supreme Court there.
That's quite a story.
That's a 105-year-old man. And you mentioned Tony Barrasso,
Yeah.
97 years old. We lost the great World War II.
Yeah.
Ah.
Tony is, if you know him, and I'm sure you do, he's just a great individual.
Do you remember Sal Santoro?
I do, yeah.
103 years old, was going to be 104 this coming February.
I was down there at the last birthday he had down there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Passed away.
Yeah.
So, I'm a young one compared to them, but I mean, they are the veterans that really were in the war. I get in at the end of the war.
I think Tom Brokaw referred to them as the greatest generation.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, I always say everyone that puts on a uniform is from the greatest generation.
Yeah.
But but the difference is, we had a volunteer in an enlisted army when I was young. Today is strictly a volunteer army.
Yeah.
And we do have some great volunteers that go into the service, John.
Sure do.
I'd like to speak to you about the senior center, because I brought that up before on there. As you go up the stairs, and I mentioned that to your counselor before you, and I'll mention it to every counselor. As you go up the stairs on the left-hand side, the railing is very bad. We've had people fall. The brickwork is very bad. It's falling apart. Nothing has really been done. I mean, and then when you go in the back, the parking lot is bad. I mean, you could trip and break your head. The sewer drain sometimes crops open. One of these days, we're going to lose a senior citizen, and we're going to not be able to account for him if that drain remains open. Isn't there something that the council and the city can do to expedite it?
I think there certainly should be. I mean, each year we have what's called free cash, and free cash, and we understand we have several $1 million in free cash right now.
And that can be used for any small items.
In my opinion, free cash, and I think by most municipal accounting standards, free cash is to be used for one-time expenditures, like buying a vehicle for one of the departments, like a fire engine or a police car, fixing the roof on a building, anything that is not a reoccurring expenditure. Free cash should never be used, in my opinion, for to fund salaries, because if you put somebody on a salary and you use free cash, and that free cash isn't around next year, then if you want to maintain that salary and that person, that position, then you have to go to the taxpayer, and it's just creating another position. So I think free cash is for a one-time expenditure, and I would hope that the director down there would put all these things that need to be done and get it up to the City Hall, and let the mayor digest it and come to the council and ask for an appropriation from the free cash, and I'm sure that the City Council would gladly support something like that.
Right now, I spoke that to the councilor before you. He said he would bring it up at the meeting.
Yep.
Would you do the same for us?
I certainly would. I would support it 100%.
But and maybe you could expedite it, you and him together.
We'll
Because
try.
I'll tell you, John, I'm thinking as a layman, free cash is good, because even, let's say it costs $10,000 to fix it, which it won't, but let's say it does. I'm not talking the parking lot. I'm just talking the front, the railing and stuff, which shouldn't have, nowhere near that. Someone falls and gets hurt.
Cost you a lot more.
Exactly. Now, I can speak for myself because I walk with one of these, and I also got a heeless shoe on my left foot that I got hurt with. I come down on the left-hand side because the railing is strong there, but I'm usually going up on the right-hand side when I come in.
Yeah.
A lot of the people, we've had people fall there, John. They just don't complain, or we help them get up, or even in the back in there. But I wouldn't want to see, money is, you can always replace the money. But if a senior citizen falls, sometimes it could really be fatal.
Well, those are, the things you're talking about, they're small expenditures.
That's what I mean, but that's never been done.
They should be addressed. But and I'm not faulting anyone for
Neither
that.
am I.
What I'm saying is that
I'm just mentioning it.
I think if the director gets a communication up to the mayor, I'd certainly support it. I'm a senior citizen myself.
I know that. I know that. I was going to say.
And I I hold on to those railings myself now.
A lot of people, and I used to say that when I was in Brockton, a lot of people give us lip service, but they never give us community or real service. So lip service is nice, but back it up with senior service. Do something,
Yep.
A journey of 1,000 miles begins with but a single step. So, even if you can't do it all in 1 week or all in 1 month, as long as you start it and take care of the main problem first, because if you take a look at that railing, John, if you go like this, it's going to come off, and if somebody leans against
someone's going to
it,
get seriously hurt. You're 100% right.
and if
that
somebody
shouldn't-
leans against it on the top, I'm telling you what's going to happen. If somebody does lean against it and it falls, he's going to fall about 6 to 7 feet to the sidewalk, and if he bashes his head at that fall, it's going to be more than just a railing then.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So I just want the council to know about this here. I mean, I love the City of Revere, and I love the council, but we got a great director there, and he's so busy. He doesn't get involved in a lot of things because he's got a million other things to get involved in.
Yeah.
But I thought I would mention it.
Well, I think that's something that the council can get involved in, and I'm sure would be involved in. But again, I think that's something that on a memo has to originate down there, come right out. And I know Mayor Arrigo would definitely take care of something like that.
I'm sure he will, and he's a great gentleman too.
Yeah, and
he's got aged parents. People don't realize, even though they're young and they live in the City of Revere, if they're in their 40s, their parents got to be 60 or over practically.
that's correct.
So, it's not only the young ones eventually are going to become seniors too.
Everyone's going to become hopefully everyone's going to become a senior.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By the way, you got 3 minutes and 26 seconds. I'd like to get one more thing into you. John, could you just give us a little synopsis about your family and your education? We'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I have I've had some recent losses in my family, and I really don't, that's a
Okay.
tough thing for
About
me,
your
but,
education then?
Revere Public Schools, worked for GE in their advertising department, business management, finance courses through GE. I had a good political education. I worked in the governor's office in Massachusetts for 2
Who
years.
was governor at the time?
Governor Peabody. I was his administrative secretary.
Oh,
And that gave me a great education with regard to politics. And with the late George Colella, he and I attended seminars at the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. So I feel very well qualified to be doing what I'm doing now. I consider this only because I am retired. I consider this a full-time job, and I'm up City Hall every day. And some people say to me, what are you doing up there? And I say, well, that's the only way you get something done. If you go up there and knock on the mayor's door, and he's normally pretty responsive, and we get some things done.
right. I would like to say one thing and express my condolences to the Haas family, because I was in the hospital when Bob Haas passed away. And he was a great mayor, did a great thing for the city, and did a great thing for the people, but he did a great thing for our senior center.
Yeah, and I was actually, I worked in Bob Hass's office for 2 years as his administrative assistant during his last 2 years as mayor. And Bobby was very passionate about the senior center. That was the old telephone building, if you remember. And
Yep.
he wanted to see it go to some good use, and it did. And Bob Hass himself, he had two things that I remember very clearly about him. He was a good family man, good father, good grandfather, and also a good mayor and a good city councilor. And he cared about this city.
Right, John?
And I respect Bob Hass for that, and I
Well,
miss him.
I guess we're out of time now, and I want to thank you for coming up here.
I want to thank you for having me.
No, it's an honor and a pleasure, John.
Yeah, it's my
I wish you the
pleasure,
best of luck, and
yeah.
God bless you, John.
Thank you.
And God bless the people of Revere. God bless our troops, but most of all, God bless our great country, the United States of America.
100%.
And John, thank you again for coming up, and good luck to you.
And I certainly, I'll talk with Councilor Novoselsky about that.
Every counselor,
Yeah, and
thank you.
we'll get it moving.
You got it.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's an honor and a pleasure.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. Thank you.